Hello YouTube, it's the Frog Queen here, and today I'm doing an interview with American comic book writer John Arcudi. You would probably know him best for his work on the BPRD, the Hellboy spin-off. I know him best for not only BPRD, but his most recent series, Rumble. But today, we're going to talk a little bit about those series, a little bit about his past work, but most importantly, his new upcoming limited run with Dark Horse. It's a 5-issue series called Dead Inside. And without further ado, here's the interview.
So you're in Halifax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Right. I figured you had to be farther east than most of the East Coast of the United States, so I was kind of limited to that. So.
Yeah, so it's Atlantic time.
Right. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
That sucks that I'm fucking EST and you get Atlantic time. That blows.
Well, nobody knows what Atlantic time is in the States. It's a very foreign concept. Like, it's Canadian concept, and no one seems to understand that it's like a 4-hour difference from Western time. 1 hour difference from Eastern time. And so even though I explain this to people, they usually go, but you said we'd talk at such and such a time at Eastern. Right. And I'm like, no, Atlantic is different than Eastern. We talked about this.
It's got to be the only part of the continent that is on Atlantic time, right? I mean, unless no, even I think all of Mexico probably doesn't go any farther east than the East Coast of the United States. So it's probably the only part of the continent that's on Atlantic time. I like that.
Yeah, it's very, very Canadian.
I bet Cuba must be on Atlantic time though, right?
I don't know. I've never been to Cuba. They might be.
Is that the only way you can tell? You have to be there. Oh, look, my phone didn't switch. I'm gonna look into it. I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna check because this is important to me. I now have decided I need to move to some place that has Atlantic time because I like it. It's very romantic.
I feel like Cuba is still too far south in comparison to us because we're 1 hour ahead because we're more north.
Hey, really? It's not just because you're more east?
I thought it was because we're more north, but I could be wrong. Who knows?
I'll look into it because the meridians of the globe are divided into 24 time zones, and
right.
I don't know any latitude time zones. But hey, I'm not a doctor, so I can't.
Neither am I.
Sure.
Yeah, neither am I.
I'll let you know. I'm fascinated. As you can tell, I'm fascinated by this because I've never heard it before. Atlantic time.
Yep.
It's a lot cooler sounding than Eastern Standard. Eastern Standard Time, just by virtue of having standard in the middle of there, like, yeah, big fucking deal. But Atlantic Time is like, oh man. So
I know.
At least it is in this house right now.
Nice.
Was that a cricket? Did I just hear a cricket? What was that?
That's on your side. That's not me.
If there's a cricket here, that'd be great. Yeah, I know there's this weird little echo. Occasionally my voice echoes a bit, but and then that cricket show. Anyway, so you probably want to do the interview and get on with your life. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, it's all good. I was just doing a Moebius review of World of Adina, but I do have questions about your new Dark Horse comic.
Oh yeah. Let me ask you something. I mean, I don't want to be a douche or anything here, but like the review of anything Moebius does, isn't it just it's awesome, buy this?
Pretty much. But it's more like, I guess it's not like a review in terms of like grading a paper or grading it against something else. It's more like I usually just like to like talk about like kind of analytically, I guess. Does that make sense? So, because I talk like I do stuff on like Jodorowsky and like other things that you can't can't really just be like, you can be like, oh, it's better than this other Jodorowsky book, but you can't really be like, this is like Jodorowsky's trash, and you know,
Right,
if you're a fan,
no,
you're a fan.
Yeah. Boy, I think after like 1975, because before then there's some stuff that's like, okay, I mean it's great, but it's not, you know. But after 1975, I just feel like everything he did was pure genius. So.
Are we talking about Moebius?
Yeah, Moebius. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, some are a little more conceptually driven than others, but they're also beautifully rendered, and they're also beautifully considered. Everything that he does, the comics, the illustrations. I mean, he's he's a good guy too.
Did you meet him? Did you know him?
Yeah, I didn't know him. I met him.
Oh wow.
And he was a million years ago before I was a professional, and he was a real sweetheart. You know, his English wasn't very good, but he tried, which is, you know, it's more than you can say for a lot of French people that come over to the States.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
Super. He was demanding because he only ate we wanted to get him like a burger or something because I worked at Forbidden Planet in New York in the early 80s, mid 80s, I guess. And, he said, no, I only eat, I'm a vegan. And I didn't, I was a kid. I don't know what the fuck that was. So we had to run out and get him crudité and raw peanuts.
Yeah, he went, like, because I'm vegan as well, so I totally understood a lot of his, like, later books, which kind of, like, The World of Vedena, which basically centers on raw foodism. So it's really interesting to me, just his take on things. And I think at first he was into raw food. He wasn't actually, like, fully vegan. I'm not 100% sure. Obviously, it's difficult to research that stuff.
He didn't want any meat either. So whatever. My French is pretty crappy. So, we just dealt with him in English. But definitely, he wanted the crudité. So obviously it was raw food.
Yeah.
But he didn't want any. I mean, I didn't. What else were we going to? We weren't going to bring him meat. I guess when you think about it, it must have been raw food, right? Because we weren't going to bring him meat raw. So what choice do we have but to bring him, raw vegetables and raw peanuts?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That's really cool, though. Like, so you were working at Forbidden Planet at the time? Yeah,
like I said, this is a million years ago, 31 years ago, 32 maybe. And he was, he was demanding in that regard, but obviously the demands on him were pretty great at the time, and he didn't flinch. You know what I mean? He did the work, signed stuff. He did little drawings for everybody at Forbidden Planet at the time. Like the people working there. Yeah, I mean nothing. But he just did these little drawings. He was a sweet guy.
That's awesome.
Sorry, you want to talk about Dead Inside, right?
Yeah, well, that's, I'd gotten the preview, what was it, last week from Dark Horse. They were soliciting it, and so I know it goes on sale this December the 21st.
Right.
And I know you're working with the artist...
Sorry, I was just going to say, unfortunately, it's the same day that the Rumble trade paperback is coming out because it got delayed.
Yeah, that's right. I noticed that too, yeah.
It's nobody's fault except the printer's site went down. So, I'd love to be mad at somebody, but...
Do you try to have your releases, like, in tandem, or...?
No. I mean, my intention was to get this out on the 7th, but because of the site delay, they said, can we push it? Actually, no. There was another reason. They wanted to push it back to the 14th. I wanted it out as early as possible in December. And I scheduled this, as I'm sure you know, well in advance. And so I didn't know when Dead Inside was going to be released. But I wanted it out on the 7th because I wanted it out for holiday shopping, obviously.
Yes.
And then they said, look, we got 3 other Image trade paperbacks coming out. Can we push it to the 14th? And I was like, all right. And then there was the site crash with the printer, and they couldn't process the stuff. And as a result, it didn't make it. I got mine like on the 2nd. So I was like, oh, maybe they'll get it out by the 14th. But for whatever reason, I guess the shipping is more complex than I think it is. So.
Oh, how many more people got screwed over in that printing?
Well, I mean, I know it was at least 2 weeks, and it may have been longer. So, do the math.
That sucks.
Yeah. And what I'm actually thinking is, like, I don't know this because it was just a trade, but they use the same printer for their trays as they do for their floppies, right? And I'm like, how many floppies got delayed?
Yeah, that's
the real fucking,
And that makes people angry.
Yeah, and it makes it fully returnable, and it's not Image's fault. So, it's. So I was lucky in that regard. I mean, it's just a trade paperback. We could have benefited from earlier holiday shopping, obviously, but ultimately we didn't. It didn't become a fully returnable book, floppy. So it's good. Whatever. Anyway, all business bullshit. You don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about Dead Inside. Linda Caruso.
Yeah, well, I know that you're working with Tony Fejula. Is that how you say it? Fejula. Okay. Yeah. I've never seen his work before, but it looks amazing. And I wanted to know how you got working with him in general on this project.
I discovered I'm not as much as I used to be because I'm so busy now editing, books, my own books and stuff. But I used to be very, very vigilant about every morning. I wake up and I go on the internets and I look for anybody that might come up on my radar. And there used to be this site, which I think was, I can't remember who it was, but some Canadian dude, not Leaf Peng, someone else, called Drawn. And there'd be, that's how I found James Herron and Tonchi Zonjic too, by the way.
Oh.
Actually, no, Tonchi, not James. And the guy would just post things that he would find. So it was a great sort of hub to find these things, And I'm not sure that I found Tony on Drawn, but I know I found Tonchi on Drawn. But it's possible. My point is I would go online and I would just look around, see what I could find. And I stumbled across Tony stuff and I was like, holy shit. So I didn't have anything ready to work with him on at the time, but I sent his stuff to the guys at Dark Horse. And I was like, this guy is someone you really need to talk to and work with. And I started obviously communicating directly with Tony, and it's probably more like Tony, but we're going to stick with Tony.
Oh, okay.
Because he's Serbian descent.
Okay.
So, eventually, Scott got him to work on Veil with Greg Rucka at Dark Horse.
Right. I love Greg.
Yeah. And then I was like, well, that's great, but hey, I'm the one who brought him to your attention. And so Scott said, well, why don't we do a Lobster Johnson one shot? And so I got a chance to work with Tony then. And I think what's it called? The Glass Mantis, I think. A one shot Lobster Johnson story that I did with Tony. And it was a ball, obviously. He's great. He can do anything that he wants. And so when I came up with this idea, he was the first guy I thought of. So I contacted him and he was available, and there you go.
That's awesome. So How long have you been, how long did it take you to cultivate the story for Dead Inside?
The truth is, I've been trying to write this story for about 15 years.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I discovered the Jail Crimes Division. I can't remember which came first. It was either an article I read or a documentary I saw. And then I think it must have been the documentary, and then I read the article to expand, my knowledge, And that was about 15 years ago, 14 maybe, something like that. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And it was really hard at that time to do research on it. But I was really committed to doing it. And I, for whatever reason, things just get in the way, and it didn't happen. And after about 2 years of not doing it, I was like, someone else is going to do it first. Forget it,
Right.
And then I guess it was last year sometime, it just popped back in my head for whatever reason. Maybe I saw something about it online. I'm not sure. And I was like, oh shit, I don't think anyone's done that, at least not in comics. And I don't remember any movies or books or anything. And so I went back and I was able to do more research. And so bang, it was a lot of things when you're a writer, if you live long enough and you're successful long enough, they work like that,
Yeah. No, totally. How many series does this make for you, actually? Because I feel like you've written more than I can count.
You mean in terms of creator own stuff or just anything? It's a lot, whatever.
Yeah, just in general, like.
I couldn't begin to give you a number.
See, that's what I was trying to think of.
That's sort of like, that's kind of not a great thing, right? Because if a series succeeds, you stay in it a long time, but if it fails, you go to do the next one. So that's why sometimes the limited series is works better. Because we only wanted to do 5. It's cool. We only wanted to do 5. It's all right.
Yeah.
But like Doom Patrol, that was about 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have loved to have stayed on longer. I had more stories I wanted to tell and stuff. But that's the way it works. They wanted to give it to John Byrne, who, if I'm not mistaken, didn't even last as long as I did on that series.
Yeah,
so,
I don't think so.
On the one hand, it's okay because I get to work with lots of different people. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, you kind of like, BPRD I was on for a good long time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I read most of it. I think there was this time mid-series where I was like, oh, I'm broke. I can't afford the floppies right now. And then I got behind by like 8 months and I'm like, no, fuck it. I'm going to have to wait for trade. That happens when you get poor and stuff.
Yeah, I've been there and don't think that I'm not, on the fringes even so, right? Comics, they don't make you a lot of money. Some people it does that we talked about earlier, but not, not everybody. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. That they gave me. I think that's maybe why I've done so many series is that I don't do a lot of things well, but I think I do the sort of long form story pretty well. I can plan and plot if I know I've got some time to work with, and that was the case on BPRD. And the same is actually true on Rumble. I knew that I was going to have some time to do some of this stuff and to make stuff pay off later. The Dead Inside, it's a little different because we're working on a contained story. I'd hoped that we'd be able to do more series or arcs or however you want it, but right now we're working with a limited series. If it does well, I'd certainly like to do more.
How many issues is it going to be limited to?
5.
5? Okay.
Yeah, so it's just this one murder mystery, and it's that obviously, but to me it's more about the arc of Linda going from being, a fuck up to maybe, we'll see. I mean, she goes from being a fuck up who maybe doesn't care as much as she should to beginning to care, and that's like the most important part of the story, is where she breaks that apathy from not being happy for so long, so she breaks that and she starts to care and everyone around her ceases to care, which is usually the way it goes. I've found in life.
That's not depressing at all.
No. Whatever. We won't talk about what people say about what I do, but I will say this. I think stories of failure are more interesting than stories of triumph.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we've read all those big triumph stories,
Yeah, and we read a lot of them when we were kids too. I mean, that's what most sort of children's stories are about, which is great.
Yeah.
But you get to a certain age, and there's a ring of truth to the story of a person who's doing his best or her best, or maybe not doing his or her best, but just struggling, and that is there's more nuance there.
Well, it's comforting. Speaking as a nihilist, I've always found it very comforting to watch other people fail.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Linda, I mean, you'll have to wait to see the 5th issue. I'm not saying that Linda fails,
right?
Ultimately, but the story of this character, she is a failure because she was very successful as a sheriff's deputy, as essentially a beat cop, if you will, being on the street and stuff. Mm-hmm. She's very good at that because she had the right skill set. She's good with people and stuff, and that's what you need. It's not what we usually have with police, but that's what you need with a police officer. But she was encouraged, almost coerced, into taking the detective's exam and moving up into the detective's department and the sheriff's office. And it's a different set of rules, It's just because you're a good cop doesn't mean you're going to be a good detective. And I found that really interesting as well, that you could be promoted to your level of incompetence. And that's usually the way it goes, right? The Peter principle. You keep getting promoted until you fail, and then you just keep that job.
Right.
And I wanted to play with that a little. That just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean you're good at everything. You're not Wonder Woman in the case of Linda. That really interested me.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask you what you based her character off of, or who, or is it completely,
Well, she's Italian American, so it's not that I really based her on a character. It's that I based her on an attitude that I grew up with, and I think that what I was trying to do is identify this sense of being lost in life. And I don't think that's fundamentally Italian American, obviously. I think everybody has gone through that at one point or another in his or her life. But I wanted that real sense that, I've been pushed into a situation where now I'm lost. Or maybe I haven't been pushed into it, but I've been encouraged to do something that I wasn't sure I even wanted, and now I know I don't want it, and I'm stuck. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked me in another interview, what kind of, Linda seems like a broken person. What kind of research did you have to do that? Be alive?
I wonder what their life was like, the person asking you that.
Exactly. Like, who the fuck are you asking me this question, it's I know it's somewhat cliche to have these detectives, usually private detectives, obviously, who are broken and drink a lot and stuff. But I wanted there to be real reasons here. Mm-hmm. I wanted this to be something that was both personal and sort of occupational. It isn't that it's always with a dude. Some woman left me for another guy, and now I'm broken. It's almost always that.
I hate that story.
And that A, doesn't interest me, and B, fuck B. It doesn't interest me, Yeah. And so that's why this really needed to be a woman. It wasn't like I just was trying to jump on the women's bandwagon. I wanted to be a woman so that I could avoid that, and also because I wanted one of the prison guards to be married to a one of her friends.
Right.
You could make it a woman's prison guard, but the dynamic I had set up would have made that more difficult. So I just decided to go with a woman, and it's obviously it's not the easiest thing in the world for me to write, but from what I understand, women are people.
Yes, we are.
I knew it wouldn't be impossible for me to write, in terms of understanding her reactions to things and her motives. I mean, we've all been broken for reasons other than someone leaving us,
Right.
So that just interested me much more.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and I mean, because people seem to, and especially when they write female characters, well, as you said, male characters, but people seem to think like that's, you know, having loved and lost is like the worst thing that could happen to you.
Right.
And I'm just like, that's far from the worst thing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and you could argue, and I would accept this argument, frankly, that it also says something about that kind of person, that maybe that person is
shallow.
What's that?
I said shallow.
Well, I was going to say weak,
yeah,
or perhaps overly romantic, and I would accept that argument. Except, again, I'll just blanket say that I accept that argument. However, it happens so many times that it's lost the shine of being, or that the bloom is off the rose for me. You know,
right.
Like, okay, there's only so many weak people or so many overly romantic people that I need to read about. How about someone whose experience in life, and I don't want to say what I'm doing is realistic. It's a story. I'm lying, obviously. Mm-hmm. But it feels like maybe this is someone you know, instead of someone who can't get over, you know, a heartbreak 20 years later. Come on, man. People get remarried all the time.
Oh, yeah, totally. Do you think a lot of people will be able to relate to her?
I hope so. I mean, I don't know. I just do my best. I know I relate to her, and I'd like to think I'm not a complete freak, but I'd like to think it. Amy, that's all I'm going to tell you.
Okay, John.
I hope so, because I think that, again, like whether or not your job has broken you, although I think a lot of people can understand that, mm-hmm. Whether or not your job has broken you, I know things have broken people that aren't related to love loss, and I know those things make those people feel trapped. And in a sense, there's a certain triumph when she even starts to feel again, you know, when she starts to look at this case a little more critically than anybody else is willing to let her look at it. And, you know, I'm not trying to tell people, look, I know you're broken, but it's going to be okay, because I don't fucking know. All I know is that this character is discovering something about her. She's discovering something about herself as she discovers, and everybody around her, as she discovers more about this crime and the motives for the crime.
Right.
And she ruins people's lives without meaning to, you know, which is not, maybe I shouldn't have said that, because it's not the thing that attracts a lot of people to come to, like, oh, this hero ruins people's lives. But it happens, you know. Yeah. You try to do your best, and you stumble over other people's lives, and their needs and their desires are different from yours, mm-hmm. And inevitably, like, it's not malicious. She's just doing her job, right. But it's, you know, just doing your job can sometimes hurt other people.
Oh yeah, well, especially when you have the power to charge someone criminally.
Right. Well, but even this is like, you know, well, you'll just have to read the rest of the story. I mean, it's complicated because it's fucking life, and maybe that's another reason that I haven't, you know, taken over the Fantastic Four, is because I'm much more interested in the complex things of life. I once said to someone that when you start thinking the problems of life are simple and the solutions are simple, that makes you the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Because everybody has his or own shit, man. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it's also kind of that whole thing where people are like, my pain is not right. My pain is worse than your pain, or your pain is insignificant.
Yeah, you know, and some people might say that comics isn't the best place for this. Okay, you know, your comics aren't. My comics are. Well, I think that.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. There's a delay.
I was going to say, it's a medium, and any story can be told in any medium. It has to be told differently in each medium, but I don't think that just because it's comics that it can't be complicated. You know, I mean, certainly there have been other arguably better craftsmen at this job, like Art Spiegelman, you know, and Mouse, that prove that. So I feel no such restrictions, except, of course, the commercial restrictions.
Yeah, and I don't like the idea of people putting comics in a special box and saying comics can only be like this. That doesn't make sense to me. No. I mean, all the comics that I read and love, I mean, they're all so it's the diversity, you know? And to this day, whenever I fall in love with a new series, it's generally because it's radically different from anything else I've ever read.
Right.
Which is hard, right?
Yeah, but it seems that most of the series that are the bigger success series, you know, are the stories and the series that are exactly the same as other ones. It's hard to understand for me.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I mean that's more so visible in the big two world for sure, with like you know, with the superheroes and that sort of thing, and I think that's why you see such a there's been such a big rise in people and interest for people in Image Comics and Dark Horse and more creator-owned content and stuff. Even, you know, a lot of independents are like getting out there on these very tiny labels and seeing big success now.
Yeah, well, big being a relative term, but I know what you mean.
Yeah. In comparison to the big two, not so much, but you know, for someone to just put out a self-published kind of book and make, you know, 10,000 sales, like that's pretty fucking awesome.
That's absolutely huge. No question. And you can, you know, when you can make more money at Image Comics selling fewer copies than you can, you know, working at the big two. Like that, your book won't survive at the big two if it's selling, you know, 6 or 7 or 8,000 copies. But it will at Image, and when the trade comes out, you'll see a return, you know? Yeah,
for sure. And I like also just the way that Image does their trades. And I think it's really important. You know, they always offer the trade number 1 for a discount, at a discount, so you can kind of get a flavor for it.
Yeah, it's real smart. When I started, I know we're getting away from Dead Inside, but when I started talking to Eric about, you know, Rumble, you know, James and I were on the phone with him, and he says, "Oh, we like to do the first trade at $10." I'm like, "Whoa, what are you, dude?" And then he just said, "I'll tell you why, because we've discovered that if you put a book in someone's hand at $10, there's zero resistance to them walking over to the register."
It's so true.
Yeah, and I was like, "Okay." That's all it took for me to hear.
And then they get hooked, you know, and then they're paying, you know, full price for the rest of them.
Which is fine, because it's not like we're robbing them.
No, of course not.
We're picking our own pockets, selling the first one for $10, you know?
Yeah. So
no one's seemed to me anyway so far to be angry about having to pay for a reasonable price for the later trades. It's a great business model.
Oh, you know? Yeah. And there have been so many Image series that I went and looked at and was like, you know, I didn't get this when it was in singles, but here's the $10 trade and I'll pick it up and see if I like it.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Rumble started out strong and then it sort of tailed off. But as soon as the trade started coming out, people have been going, you know, like, again, relatively speaking, but especially artists are going bananas and contacting me. The third trade paperback has 21 pinups in it.
Holy, I had no idea.
Well, we didn't get to do pinups in the first trade because this is the first time I edited a book. Right. I mean, I've edited books in the past. It was the first time I wrote and edited a book at the same time. And what was that?
Oh, that was just my my computer making noises.
And so I was juggling a lot of balls, you know, and I didn't have time to get pinups. So for the second trade paperback, we had 10. And then people just came at me for the third trade paperback. You know, can I do a pinup? Can I do a pinup? I'm like, I'm not turning anybody away. You know, if you want to do it, I'm not turning anybody away. And so we ended up with 20 pinups. And I was like, well, that averages out to about 10 per trade, right? It all works out. But it's been incredibly gratifying because I'll tell you, a lot of my friends obviously did it, but people who I didn't know came to me and asked me if they could do them.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was nice, you know? And when you see it, man, I mean, are you on Instagram? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you've probably seen the pinups that I posted there.
Oh, yeah.
And it runs the gamut, although as a friend of mine said, most of it is kind of boy art. But I did get Rebecca Kirby's piece in there. I hope more women will contribute next time. But they're not the ones that came at me. And I'm like, hey, I can afford free, you know?
Yeah.
So I felt guilty about going and asking people. I did ask a few women artists, but they were way too busy, which is great, you know, for them. But I'm not unhappy about it. I'm looking at it right now. I'm flipping through it. There's Lawrence's, which is just like a fucking movie poster.
If you can get Becky Clune in there, if she's ever put down her pen and her millions of projects she has.
I love her stuff. I would love it. I didn't ask her because I asked her a long time ago for something and she was too busy. I did ask Emma Rios. She was too busy. I'm hoping that I can maybe get Becky for a Rumble cover or Emma for a Rumble cover.
That would be wicked.
But, yeah, that'd be great. But I like Emma. We're far from close friends, but we know each other. We trade emails and stuff. Becky, I can't say the same about, so I don't know how she'd feel about, hey, you want to do a cover for next to nothing? You know? So, but because she doesn't have an image series, does she? That she draws, I mean?
She was working on Gotham Academy last year for DC, and she is, what is she doing right now? I follow her on Instagram, so I always know, but she's got like 3 or 4 things on the go right now that she's been talking about.
But she's writing mostly, right?
She's doing a lot of writing.
Was she writing The Punisher? Is that accurate?
I think so, yes, actually. Yeah.
So I don't know if she knows the image model and stuff, but everyone who's worked with image understands the image model and they're like, don't worry about it. No, it's, you know, someday James will do something for me or you'll write something for me. Don't worry about it. That's cool. And then now we're talking real business here. Hey, Becky! Want to do a Rumble cover?
What about, do you know Allison Sampson?
I do. She's real sweet.
I love her work.
Yeah. She's super talented and super sweet. And she came to comics a little late, which is kind of cool because she brings a real different vision to comics than not only most men, but most women, you know, because a lot of women in comics, thankfully, I'm really happy about this, come in really young. And there's this freshness to their work, which is really exciting. But someone who's a little bit older, who, you know, worked professionally, she's an architect originally, or, you know, an architectural draftsman, I think.
Yes.
Draftsman. Sorry.
That's what she did for years.
Yeah, and so she comes to comics a little later and with a real different vision and voice. And it's great. That's what I really... This is the thing. I've been in comics for fucking ever, you know? And this is what I've been hoping for since 1986, you know? Not necessarily women coming into comics, although I've been hoping for that as well. But comics really being this big, eclectic ball of everything. And it's super exciting, which is why I'm really, really thankful that I hung around. I'm sort of like Nixon, you know? I hung around long enough, and now I get to work with a lot of young artists, and it's really, really exciting. I'm working with the Rebecca Kirby, the woman who did the pinup of Kogan with the Hydra in the trade paperback, and that's super, super exciting because obviously her perspective is completely different from mine, and it's massively enlightening. It's fucking fantastic. I love it.
It's just, I don't know, it's interesting, like, how I do notice that, like, for the last few series that you've worked on, they all feel very, like, the people that you work with, they have, like, and I'm sure it has because of, like, the stories you're writing, too, they have such this dark vibe, you know? It's, and I mean, like, it totally translates, like, everyone you're working with, but everything feels so modern. Like, everyone you worked with, like, in, like, the last few years, they just feel so modern. I love it. It's just, it's really different. It's really refreshing. Yeah. And that's what I loved about Rumble, because before I noticed that you were writing it, and of course, because I was a BPRD fan, I just got this solicit from Image, and this beautiful artwork was just like, bam, on the press release. And I was like, holy crap, I've got to read this now.
Well, and it's thank you very much for everybody, obviously for James and Dave too. The really fucking exciting thing for me about I've been swearing a lot. Is that cool?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I run an adult YouTube channel.
You're putting it on YouTube, so I don't know. I guess you can do that on YouTube. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, you can.
I just want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So the real nice thing about working on Rumble is like my scripts for Rumble are completely different from my scripts for BPRD. James's art is completely different, especially from his early stuff that we did together on BPRD. And Dave's colors are completely different from the way he colored James on BPRD. Mm-hmm. So you've got this story that's much more fabulous than BPRD. BPRD is a sort of like, death march to the end of the world. And Rumble is far from, being, I was going to say The Sound of Music, but there's some dark shit in Sound of Music, isn't there?
I've never seen The Sound of Music. I'm terrible.
Well, the Nazis are there, so that's all you need to know.
Okay.
But it's funnier. It's relatively speaking more lighthearted. Maybe not the last arc, but and it's like I said, there's more like a fable than it is anything like a reality. And so I like that I'm working with these people that are committed to making this stuff different from what they have done before. And that's a lot of fun, mm-hmm. I don't know if I'll ever write like children's book stuff, although I have been thinking about it. But I do want everything to feel different from, whatever I've done previously. Not completely different, but different enough so that people don't feel like they're getting fed the same, ham sandwich every week.
Right, so they're not like, oh, this is definitely a Grant Morrison story. And this is definitely a Grant Morrison story.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel now.
I'd rather be more like John Bram, the director, where you don't know, like he'll do whatever the hell he wanted. He did whatever the hell he wanted to do, and some of his stuff was dark and some of his stuff was, crazy. And, rather than, Alfred Hitchcock, which is like, yeah, well, we know what we're getting here.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe we'll turn the needle up to 11 on Psycho, but we know what we're getting here. And then fucking 14 on Frenzy. So I like to try to be more, not that, I'm really the director, I'm the writer, the screenwriter, I guess. But I just want to have fun, and I don't know that I could have. Just like I don't think the readers can have fun reading the same thing over and over again. I know I couldn't have fun writing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I'm personally, because I just read so much. I do read a lot of stuff, and I'm like, oh my god, this is shit. And then I just never talk about it because I don't want to even write a review on something I dislike. Unless I passionately hate it, then I'll be like, okay, now I'll write the review.
Yeah.
But I have to feel something.
I know what you mean. And yeah, for your gig, you've got to read a lot, and I don't envy you that. But I think if I were a reviewer, I could never do Siskel and Ebert, or I guess nobody and nobody now. Yeah. But I couldn't be a film reviewer because I would not review the film. I would say nothing about the films I didn't like, and I would just review the films I did like, and that doesn't help a lot of people. I mean, that's ostensibly what a reviewer is supposed to do, is keep people from buying or wasting their money on a bad movie. But I just don't think I could do it because it's like, hey, okay, it sucked. That's all I got. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into the reasons why it sucked. You might feel differently, but it's over for me.
Right. Well, I guess my thing is too, I don't actually read a lot of other reviews, which I probably should, but I don't because I don't like the way that a lot of people conduct their reviews.
I agree.
And I just try to make mine more like analytical, talk about the politics of the story. Art is subjective. I can't like go, oh my god, this artwork is just shit, unless the perspective is like skewed in some way, or this person just literally can't draw worth a damn. But you can't say this is 100% crap when somebody is clearly talented, but it's just in a style that you don't like.
Right. Yeah, that's a lesson I didn't learn until my late teens. But early enough. But it's true. Like art is, writing. Some styles are subjective as well. But you're right. There are certain, if the structure of the story doesn't work, the structure of the story doesn't work, and you can comment on that, I think, legitimately, and you can analyze maybe why it doesn't work. But it's more interesting to me to analyze, to do what you're doing, to talk about why. Like, why is this story this story?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it interesting? That to me is much... The worst kind of review, and you see it everywhere, is the person just telling you the story.
Oh, and that to me isn't a review. That's a summary.
No. Yeah, like, how is this, did you like it? Like, what the... And sometimes I'll give a review and saying, so you should buy this. I stopped reading reviews a long time ago because I read 3 or 4 of those, and I was like, 3 or 4, 30 or 40 of those, and I was like, okay, I'm not really, I'm not, whatever. I'm not learning anything about what I might have done wrong, I've only read a handful of reviews when I was still reading them. Probably stopped around when A God Somewhere came out that I stopped. That I thought, like, oh, that's interesting. That's something I need to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think there are probably more readers out there who are more sophisticated in the way they approach the comics consumption than there are reviewers. Like there's a higher percentage of readers.
For sure.
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of reviewers are just fans. And
right.
the worst thing that I've ever bothered with is reading or watching reviews of people who are reviewing solely superhero comics. Because they're usually fanatics. Like, yeah. And so the reason that they'll say they hate something is because they didn't like what you did with their favorite character.
Right. Which is like that. I'm sorry. That's not a legitimate complaint.
It's not, and it pisses me off.
Yeah.
I used to get into wars with people on forums, and then I was just like, no, I'm not, never talking. Don't read the comments,
Yeah. No, exactly. Like, stop now. Yeah. Like you'll get yourself twisted, man.
Oh, scary.
And it's like. When you were before the internet, you'd get in an argument with one person, and maybe that would work you up. But on the internet, there's like 5 or 6 people coming at you, and you're embattled.
Oh yeah,
they're much ruder online than they are in person. So as a result, you get bent. And
if you have a female screen name, which I learned long ago to never ever have,
didn't even think of that.
You just get the suck my cock comments.
Yeah, well,
in response to your very...
But yes, I can understand why it would be more common if you had a female screen name. It's changing, fortunately, but it's still a relatively dangerous. Maybe dangerous is overstating it. It's a relatively challenging arena for women to operate in. It's changing rapidly, and I'm really happy about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of change going on for sure.
Yeah, a lot of women in comics at all levels, which is fantastic. I think you're going to see a lot less of that in spite of the Trump win, at least in the comics world. I think a lot less of that kind of. I mean, it's going to happen. It's going to happen everywhere. It's always going to happen. But I think you're going to see a lot less of it because some of these douchebags' favorite artists are going to be women.
Mm-hmm.
So they gotta. It's like fucking Jackie Robinson. Plenty of people play. Working in baseball, playing baseball, professionally speaking, going to baseball games. They thought they had certain attitudes about race, and then Jackie Robinson came in and played ball like a motherfucker, and he earned respect, which made people re-examine their attitudes about race. And I think that's what's going to happen with women. It's just going to make the people that, we would like to characterize as our enemies, these, misogynists or sexists, they get them to re-examine themselves, and their true selves will come out. I think that's really important to remember, that, there's no such thing as all evil in this world. I'm sure when some guy says, sucks my cock, you're like, okay, I want that guy dead. But, and he may not be someone who gets turned, but there are people who are racists and misogynists who, when confronted with the realities of what those two things mean, a lot of them, they turn, they change, they become better people. I've seen it happen. So.
Well, I hope that's what happens.
I sure do too, obviously, because I'm loving this industry right now. I shouldn't say industry. I'm loving this medium right now. I'm loving it, and I like all the voices and visions that are now available to me as a consumer. It's fantastic.
So I wanted to ask you, because I know we're running over an hour now.
Because I'll just yap forever.
I'm exactly the same way. I'm terrible. I always ask everybody, who they want to work with next. Like, who are the people, if you could work with anybody, if money was no object, or personal dislikes for each other were no object, who would you work with?
I'm okay. I'm good. I've gotten to work with some of the very best in this business, and I'm really thankful for that. I'm really grateful.
Your bucket list is done?
Not that it's done. I'll work with anybody, but there's no one person that I've got, like a Jones for.
Right.
Like,
okay.
I want to work with whoever has the same enthusiasm for this medium that I do. I want to work with, and people, whose work that I like. But I mean, I'd love to work with Emma Rios, but she writes herself. I just get in her way. I'd love to work with Becky Cloonan, but again, she writes for herself. I just get in her way. Mike Mignola, but he writes for himself. I just get in his way. I don't think Richard Corbin, again, I just get in his way. I've written for him a few times, and whenever I read the stuff that he writes for himself, it's much better. I'm serious. Like, he does things that I can't do for him. So I want to work with anybody who is committed to a collaboration, and someone that who I won't get in that person's way. It's just Andrew McLean. Love his stuff. But
I was just thinking of him. That's so weird. I was literally just being like, it would be nice to see you play with Andrew McLean and get together and do something. And then you say it, and I'm like, I was literally just thinking that.
but again, he's a better writer without me. Like,
he's a great writer. Yeah, for sure. I mean, all those people are great writers.
Yeah, like, these are people that I don't want to get in their way. And Andrew McLean, like, he has a really fertile imagination. And I'm not saying I don't, but, he's not the right guy to draw Dead Inside. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you guys definitely have completely different, even themes. Like your stories, the themes in your stories are so different. Like, I don't really see any parallels there.
Right, and that's great. That's great.
It's interesting.
I'm good buddies with Andrew, but it's never occurred to him to ask me to write something for him, and it's never occurred to me to ask him to draw something, with me.
Right.
It's never, which is fantastic. Sean Murphy, I got to work with him once, but I think that he is better served writing his own stuff. It's just the people whose stuff that's, I don't know, whatever. I'll just leave it at that. I'm good.
Okay.
I've got no one person on my list. Whoever, like Rebecca Kirby. I didn't even know she was drawing comics until just a few years ago. And I'm very excited about working with her right now. But, you know, I wouldn't have put her on that list. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, I was Rebecca Kirby because I didn't know who the fuck she was.
Right.
Know? So it doesn't behoove a person to dream. It behooves a person to do. You know?
Thank you so much for giving me your time today.
All right, Amy, again, really, thank you so much. Nice talking to you, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do this again soon.
For sure. All right, take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.